dashboard. I probably won't, I'll repeat this when some people are on, but I probably won't be on for an hour today, just because of the fact that, like I said, I think it actually is like a chest infection I've had now, because I thought to start with it was where I'd been exposed to like some sort of dust or whatever, like fiberglass in the attic or whatever. But because I've had more of a sore throat now and like a runny nose and other stuff, I think, yeah, I've just got a cold. So it does hurt me to talk if I talk for too long. But yeah, but hopefully you get some people on, because like I said, I wanted to do streams the last few days, but my chest was hurting too much from where I've been coughing. Today's the first day I can actually do more than a couple of sentences at once, and it's, you know, not making my chest hurt. And I can also sleep properly now, because for a couple of days, I had the really annoying thing that because my chest was so sore, I had to sleep, you know, like kind of on my back and kind of on my right side. And then I'd have the issue where if I rolled over in my sleep, which I do a lot, I'd wake up with chest pain. It's all right, Rich. All right, Jake. Oh, Jake's retracted his message. Oh, if you post it again, Jake, I'll read it out. If it was a question, I saw something about a filter and then it went away. But yeah, so like I said, thankfully it's like more just normal cold symptoms now. So Jake says, I open a gas mask filter and resell it. Do you have to use it still, or what's lost? I don't get what you mean if you resell it. If you open it and like use it, it's not going to last the shelf life. No, the shelf life is when it's sealed, like canned food. So basically it'd be like you wouldn't, it's the reason you wouldn't trust an old filter is the same reason you wouldn't eat anything that's like canned food that had been opened. Well, if you're using it, what will happen is it won't last till the end of its original shelf life. It will still be safe to use. Again, like I said, the problem is once you expose them to anything, they're not going to last as long. But it's a how long is a piece of string question. So again, I'll do a video on these. I picked up some of these and I was surprised they were still in date. So the expiry on these is 2027. But as soon as, say, for example, if I ripped all the packaging off of this now and opened it, it's not going to last till 2027. That's the longest possible shelf life. But again, like I said, I know canned food isn't a great analogy, because the thing is, like with canned food, it obviously will make you sick. And like with loads of old filters, unless there's something horrible in them and they're not damaged, they won't make you sick, but you know, they won't work properly. But yeah, like I said, so I was quite pleased this had oh, so that's interesting. It says 2026-10 there, but the sticker on the top says 06/01/2027. Again, it probably depends on manufacturer versus whoever labeled them. But yeah, but like I said, it's still technically in date for another like 9 months, these filters. And again, most likely, yeah, because it's now been exposed to the air. But again, it's obviously a filter is going to degrade fastest when it's opened and it's actually exposed to stuff it has to filter, like gases and things like that. But yeah, it's a really hard thing to answer because it's completely theoretical. The MF14 panoramic mask I prefer. I mean, I like the look more of the MF11, but the FMJ05. But the MF14 is a better mask in terms of comfort and like visibility. And it's, you know, an easier mask to just get it at a good price and know it will fit you and everything else. But yeah, Jake, it's just one of those kind of annoying things where it's really hard to know. Like, obviously, some filters are only going to literally last minutes when exposed to certain things. Yeah, exactly, Rich. That's the thing. It's like if you've opened a filter and you reseal it and then you keep it resealed for ages and reuse it, it's still got a high chance of working, but I wouldn't trust it, if that makes sense. Because, like I said, filters I've got for real emergency situations, I've got, like, sealed in, you know, like, the proper foil wraps that, in an emergency, I could rip that foil wrap open and put the filter on the mask and have a brand new, in-date filter on it. But for, like, obviously just using the mask for casual stuff, you know, expired filters don't really matter. And again, even when the filter has technically passed its expiry date, if it's barely been used, it's like, might still be good. But it's one of those things that, nobody, you know, in any serious work would trust an expired filter, because it's like one of those things, you don't trust your life or like your long-term health on something, you know, if you know, you're exposed to gas and then the filter's out of date. It's just like one of those things. It's, again, like I said, it's the theoretical how long is a piece of string question, if you ever heard that expression. It depends on like the model of filter and whatever, because like what I really liked of the Romanian filters I had is one of them actually had literally printed on the side of it, once it was opened, how long the filter would last when exposed to certain gases. And that was only like, obviously, if it's exposed to one of the gases. If it was exposed to a combination of them, it probably lasts a shorter amount of time. But I did like the fact, you know, it said like chlorine in whatever concentration, the filter will last like 6 hours or whatever. Yeah, exactly. You know, when the particular filter, like the weird thing with like gas masks is particle filters don't normally fail unless they've been damaged, because particle filters, as they clog up, they just become harder to breathe, but they're not actually going to compromise the mask. So, you know, just the breathing resistance gets worse and worse and worse and worse. But, you know, otherwise they're all right. But obviously the charcoal filter, the carbon filter, is the bit that, yeah, when that's completely failed, you can smell through the mask like you're not wearing a filter. If it's kind of working, it's lowering the concentration of stuff, but obviously you're still breathing in hazardous stuff. But yeah, if like Rich said, if you're using it for certain things, you'll know when the filter's, you know, losing its effectiveness, because you'll go from smelling like the inside of the mask smelling your sweat or whatever, like, you know, like a rubber smell and a bit of sweat, to smelling like, you know, some sort of fumes or whatever. Oh, what you mean? Like you didn't want to just use a little half face mask? Yeah, it's a good idea to use, because again, a mask won't protect you from carbon monoxide and things like that. Well, there are some filters that will, but only to a certain degree compared to a proper air tank. But the thing is with yeah, is I agree with you. If you're outside and there's smoke burning and like fumes from, especially burning plastics and that, I would much rather have a gas mask than nothing. You know, like I said, even though really, if there's lots of burning smoke, you want, you know, an air supplied thing. But yeah, for just burning like trash piles and that, a gas mask would be fine. Um, so Firebird was saying I got filters that was sealed like that, like the one you just shown, but some was vac, some wasn't, but some didn't have any damage to the packaging. So well, these are capped ones as well as the foil. Like, so these ones, I can feel there's like a rubber or plastic cap there. GP5s again, and there's a cap there, and you can see it's still got the thing on. So even if there's a hole in this plastic, the seal is still good. The reason I don't like, say, the 3M, not 3M, these are 3M. The reason I don't like the Scott filters like this is they don't put caps on the filter. So if there's any like rip in the bag, your filter's expiring even when you're not using it. Because, you know, it's like if somebody put food in packaging that's going to easily rip open when it's just stored on a shelf. It's like a really bad way of, you know, making packaging. Like, so GP5s were fine when they were made. In theory, the mask design is still fine. The problem with actual GP5s, as I probably said before, is obviously they're all at the stage now of being like 1990s production or earlier, because they're Soviet. And the main issue you have is getting good filters for them, because they're GOST masks, not NATO threaded. So if you like the GP5, I'd say get a Chinese TF1, and then you can get a mask. As long as you get a good TF1, you can get them in the 40mm NATO style thread that are made for export, and that are completely modern made with you like new rubber valves and everything. But again, the GP5 is very basic though. The problem is doesn't have, on the normal model, doesn't have a voice diaphragm. So you know, on the normal model, other people can barely hear you. You basically are very muffled. Apologies, like I said, still got a bit of chest pain. That's why I'm not going to do a full hour today. But in terms of would they protect you? Yes. I mean, obviously, the thing like with the masks is more modern like masks made by good companies are generally better because they've got more at stake than trusting surplus. But surplus stuff is generally fine as long as it's been stored properly. And again, but the problem is a lot of surplus is I've had stuff before that's been in near mint condition because it's been properly in climate controlled storage, you know, really, really well. and then you can get other stuff that's been kept in like some damp or like dry environment for years, you know, that's then you know, like aged horribly because it's just, you know, been left to rot essentially. It's like, you know, tanks that are well stored versus the tanks in the Russian tank graveyards that they're pulling out to try and repair. It's, you know, they're two very different things. If the packet is properly sealed, then they'll be fine. Like I was saying, Firebird, the problem is if they don't have the caps on and the packet's ripped. Because like I said, there's different ways companies can seal filters. The best possible way is caps on the filter plus like a vacuum packed like foil bag with a rip open, like a quick rip open section. Because then, you know, you can get the filter open quickly in an emergency and get the caps off of it. But it's got like 2 layers of protection. Like a plastic bag without caps isn't very good because of how easy it is to get tears in the plastic. And, you know, caps on their own, if there's no bag around it, aren't particularly good because you don't know if anybody's tampered with it before. But, you know, like I said, it's why I like both. But again, you know, beggars can't be choosers. If you're buying surplus filters or like, you know, filters that don't have long on their shelf life, hence why they're cheap, you know, you just have to find what you can find. But that's like I said, it's like with the Scott filters, they're ones that are sealed without caps on, you know, just in a plastic bag, which is why I don't like them. Because, yeah, they are absolutely fine if the bag is intact, but they can so easily get punctured. I'll have to look. I don't know, Saint. I mean, other than the video I talked about on the other day, but that was a 3M filter I was showing just now. But let's go to Avon's website. What I do like on the Avon website, going back to what you're talking about filters, is they actually show you on their thing, on the Avon website, they give you the full like spec sheet of the filter. So it does tell you like against what concentrations of stuff, how long the filters last. It's like I was saying, for some reason that link's not working. Let me just search Avon protection to Google rather than and I hate it when it keeps trying to do the like suggestive thing when you don't want to use it. Right, their site's working. I think the link I was on was dead. So we'll go to the shop. Right, so the filter that we're going to want to look at is the CBRN C50, because I think that's the one that that's 6183, and that's excluding VAT. So I assume you'd add VAT to it. So again, it's expensive, but if you just wanted to buy a filter every like 10 years for a bug out bag, that's fine, really. Again, it's the more companies that start selling proper filters to the public, the more those sort of prices will come down. But the Avon ones, those are good filters in. They have the thing where they work with both the C50 and normal masks, because they've got like a little adapter on the top where the 40mm thread is like, you know, like the filter's got the concave shape and then a thing on top of it that you can remove if you want to use it concave, or you can have it like more of like a regular filter shape. But yeah, that has, and again, the other filter Avon sell I wouldn't bother with because it's just a riot filter, so it's like probably a particle and just low level charcoal filter, so it's a very expensive way of buying like an A2 thing. But I think for resources on that, yeah, they have a data sheet. And then, yeah, it states it works against G-series nerve agents, V-series nerve agents, hydrogen cyanide, cyanogen chloride, mustard leucite, CSCN, OC, which is pepper spray. And then they give you the things of the particle times. And most of these filters last 80 minutes to 400 minutes, depending on how nasty the chemical is and the concentration. Oh, wait, sorry. You only get 20 minutes of protection from nitrogen dioxide. But, for example, you get 400 minutes protection from phosgene, which is actually kind of really good, because phosgene is one of the nastiest chemical weapons that like getting through filters, as far as I'm aware. Ammonia breaks it down in just 20 minutes, though, as well. But, yeah, though their filters are going to be very similar to the thing. Apparently, they have a 5.5-year shelf life and a chromium-free. But yeah, like I said, I've got those sort of filters before, but I've never, like you said, never bought them directly from Avon. No, if you've just breathed through a GP5 filter like once or twice, you'll be fine. But again, like I've said, it's one of those things you don't want to do on purpose. Again, I did it for a very recent video on the PMG, breathe through a Hungarian version of the like GP5 PMG filter. But like it's one of those things I wouldn't do on purpose. And like I've never breathed through any of my World War II filters because just of like how much asbestos is in them compared to even the Soviet filters. I doubt that, Saint. It's just if they're making enough stock, why would they not sell to the public? Again, I trust a company more that sells to the public rather than only doing military deals. But it's again with Avon though. When I see stuff like nearly all the police in America have like Avon masks plus the U.S. Army, so I doubt they're doing badly. It's probably a case that they can produce however many masks per year, and they know there's a demand to sell. Because again, the problem is that let's say you're a civilian wanting to buy a mask for like industry or like potential whatever use. Barely any companies sell directly to the public. This is the weird thing. So it's a massive market to exploit, and it seems weird to me that companies don't do it. Because if you have the production overflow to actually put however many masks up for the public, you know, you'd think you'd want to do it. But it's because, like saying, it's like with, like I said, the only other company I kind of know of that does it directly is Myra, and again, they don't make the masks; they're technically reselling Czech masks. But like I said, that there's very few companies that actually do it. Maybe they just looked at Myra getting all those really overpriced sales and said, if they're selling, you know, really kind of mediocre Czech masks for like $300, $400, we can probably sell, you know, the Avon C50 or something genuinely good for like $500 and like, you know, dominate the market. Again, depends if it's been opened before, Jake. Like I said, it's kind of like if somebody opens a fizzy can of drink, and then you try and put the metal back on, it's not going to be right. Although, but the thing is, like with those old filters, if they've been opened, not really used for much, and properly resealed with like the rubber cap so they're airtight, I can't imagine them losing too much of their shelf life. Yeah, but how do you know somebody else hasn't opened it yet? That's my point. That's what I'm saying. The best type of filters are the ones that have both the foil wrap on and the plugs on them, because you can feel the plugs under the foil wrap, and you know the foil wrap's not broken, or like, you know, the see-through plastic wrap isn't broken, so you know it's definitely not been tampered with. It's like why they put anti-tamper things on loads of food and medicines, because there was a poisoning case where people put like poison paracetamol or something, wasn't there, into like pharmacies and stores. And before that, like product tampering, like things weren't a thing, but after that they had to become standard. And again, like the military and that probably doesn't worry about brand new massive crates of filters coming in being tampered with. But if you've got secondhand filters, you never know if they've been opened and used a bit before going back to you. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like a couple of companies do, don't get me wrong, but like I'm saying, it's never their proper full product range, is it? And again, like some of them, like 3M do. Again, I've found if you want to get, like I said, this is why I keep saying, even though people keep saying, "Oh, why do you recommend the Chinese masks?" It's because China is one of the only places I know you can get the affordable 40mm masks. Yeah, exactly, Rich. There's loads of things like that. It's and Kevin said SCG 403 got here a few days ago. I definitely like it better than the M50. It's lighter and easier to get a good cheek weld and has a better field of view. Okay, that sounds like one I'd really like to get hold of then, because like I said, I really like the C50, and the C50 and M50 are basically the same, just except for the filters they use. Although again, the cheek weld is all right on my C50 because you've only got one filter on the left side, and then I'd, you know, cheek weld with my right hand. So when I've tried like cheek welding it with my Steyr AUG, I could sight picture that perfectly. But yeah, it does sound like the SG 403 is a good mask then. But like I said, sadly, that's one I've just never seen sold in the UK other than people who have bought one and then a second hand selling it for a massive price. But yeah, so like I said, but going back to what you were saying, it's like the Chinese MF14, like I was saying, some of the other Chinese masks. at least with those, you know, you can buy a brand new 40mm mask. And again, like if you had more of a budget, then something like an Avon C50 buying directly from Avon, I'd trust a lot more, because again, with the Chinese masks, it depends which ones you're buying from which factory, if they're good or not. Like I said to people, that's the problem with the Chinese stuff, is you need to more know where it's coming from in China than the fact it's Chinese. Because there's, you know, some, sorry, pressed enter by mistake. What, when you said, hey there, random user? Oh, hello. Unless you've typed another message and YouTube didn't show it. Oh, I'm on top chat, not live chat. But don't forget to like the stream, everybody. Your other comment didn't show up anyway if you made one. But yeah, I think the thing is, like with all these things, I think if more companies made good products and sold them to the end users, so there was less of a monopoly, it's always a good thing, because it gives you, the consumer, more choice, and it forces more competitive pricing. But when you only have one or two companies deciding they're going to sell to civilians, and stuff like that, that's where I think you get these annoying price monopolies. It's why, you know, like Myra can get away with selling masks for silly prices, because for years they can kind of pretend to be the only company that sells new masks. Because like I said, it's not like Myra are buying the old OM90s, like built in the 1990s from, say, the Czech Republic, like I've got an old OM90 from that period. They are new ones made by the Czech factory. It's just they're up marketing them for such a huge value. It's basically like, you know, the sellers that buy bulk stuff in cheap from China and then, you know, put a Western style price on it, which is why I like buying direct from China when you can buy the stuff really dirt cheap, because at least you're then not paying a middleman. But yeah, like I saying, going back to seals though, that's like literally, like I said, it's the interesting thing that apparently tamper seals weren't even a thing in most countries until I think it was paracetamol, like Tylenol poisoning, or it might have been another drug. But somebody literally did the Joker thing from Batman 1989, where they started poisoning like random batches of medication, and then I think somebody started trying to do a ransom for it, but I don't know if they ever figured out. I think that person was criminally charged, but I don't think they ever figured out if the person poisoning the products was the same person doing the ransom, or if it was somebody opportunistically like saying, "Oh, give me a ransom, and then I won't tamper with your products again." That's annoying, Firebird, but like I said, you can get MF14s that do. So like I said, it's like, again, one of those things where you need to know the particular one. And again, that's, like I said, it's part of the problem with, like, sometimes eBay sellers and, like, AliExpress and all these places, although they've got a feedback system, it's not really an ideal feedback system for, like, product is sold but not really as described. Because I've seen, like, loads of listings on eBay through sellers that have really good feedback where they're selling like blatantly, you know, like 40mm Ghost masks and saying they're 40mm NATO, and it's clearly a case of they just don't know any better, or they're saying that because they think it will get them more sales, and most of the people buying the mask won't know how to do a proper check using like ammonia or anything like that, you know, or like the strong smelling stuff. What's the I'm trying to remember the proper name for banana oil, but you know, like the bitter and sweet like smelling oils, like, you know, where you can do the fit check and you can check the filter's actually properly airtight to the mask and not just mostly tight where air can get around it. But yeah, like I said, because I've mostly had really good experiences with, say, AliExpress, but I know for a hell of a lot of stuff on there, you can still get people that are going to lie about listings and that. So, you know, it's just one of those things. Like I said, I wish there was a way I could know for certain that one seller was only doing it in 40mm NATO or whatever, and then link that one. But sometimes you can even link ones that do, and then they have another batch that aren't. The person putting random question marks in while you're doing random question marks. If you want to ask a question, ask a question. Don't just spam question marks. Yeah, I think Saint is probably, again, for businesses that want to buy them. Because again, if you're a company that like has to outfit its workers with respirators, and you're actually a good company that wants to buy decent protective gear, you probably would bulk buy. It's also probably so it's easier for smaller police forces and things like that to buy, rather than having to go through like a really big government contract. Because again, I don't know before with like the old way Avon used to sell masks directly like through government contracts to police forces and militaries. like how many they'd have to put in. So I don't know. You know, I don't know, like with Avon, for example, if like the police said we want to buy 100 FM12s, if that would even be an option, or they'd have to buy like, you know, a bulk of 1,000 plus in one go, and then split them between, you know, various police forces. All right, cheers, Epic. Again, I've got over 100k subscribers, so I don't know if that really makes me a small YouTuber anymore, because I've got the silver play button. But I did see the other day. It's like, oh, it's there. Yeah, it's got something stuck to it. Needs a dusting. Like I said, I've got one of these, so I'm not a massively small YouTuber, but I know what you mean. Again, and with YouTube, it's a complete hit and miss whether I post a video and it gets a load of views, even from people that have subscribed or not. Because like a load of the Pathways stuff I did recently got way more you know, views than lots of bigger channels do. And again, I've noticed the same thing with channels I'm subscribed to and I watch quite a lot. Some of them are like the ones that are like 1 million plus subscribers, and sometimes they can put up a video and you notice in the first few days it's only got like 7k views. And again, I know they like have been tweaking the algorithm a lot. I'm pretty sure I did, Saint. Yes, I'm pretty sure I did a video on the play button like the day it arrived. And I definitely showed it off in the stream the day it arrived. Yeah, speaking about all the Amelia stuff, have you been following the latest stuff with that? So basically, the people who sort of made the Pathway stuff now are getting really butthurt about how it's being co-opted by the far right and all this. So it is like a Pepe the Frog thing all over again. And they even had a fucking segment on LBC I saw out of it where they got some like fat expert on racism or whatever, you know, to whinge about, oh, how it's such a bad use of this character. And it's like you fucking made the character in the first place, you soy boy, you know, or like people like you. And then it's like you get upset that it's the most likable character in your shitty propaganda game because it's the only person that acts like a normal human being, as well as Charlie questioning things and then Charlie getting into trouble for questioning things. And then it's like, oh, how could this happen? I don't want to wreck my play button saying no. But, and the problem is, again, if you do something like that and you destroy something, you then, again, like if the YouTube doesn't share that video properly, you fucked it up for no reason. Again, like the algorithm is so fucking weird that I don't even try and know what's going to do well in it, because some channels like do really well, and like have a very niche thing, and that's great if they can carry on doing their niche and it does well. Some channels I've noticed just do a like chasing the algorithm thing. The person just spamming question marks in the chat I'm going to get rid of, because again, I don't know why he's just spamming question marks, not actually asking a question. Maybe he asked a question several times and YouTube hit it, but you know, if they're acting like that, I can't be asked to help them. But yeah, like it's one of those things where like I said, there's some channels that like just chase the algorithm with everything they do, which sometimes works for them and a lot of the time it doesn't. But then, like, I think as well, if you constantly change the content you're making in an attempt to, like, you know, make it algorithm friendly, you know, I wouldn't have much interest in that channel anyway. Like, again, it's a bit different if it's a channel like Asmongold or whatever, where I know he's a streamer and like his videos are made, like his streams are made into more like watchable videos later on by an editor. But what my point is, like, for that, you're kind of watching more the person's take on stuff. But then for all the people like that, you get the really shitty, like somebody reacts to videos channels that YouTube sometimes really likes to promote. And it's just like somebody sat in the corner going like, with stupid over the top faces. Cheers, Zora Zadovsky, or however your name's pronounced. Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, speaking of like, yeah, so Saint just brought up they also want to ban VPNs, don't they? Or basically ban VPN for under 18s. And that, again, the under 18s thing, everything they've been fucking doing that's authoritarian recently, it's think of the children. And again, a government that's, you know, been like still not wanting to properly do a grooming gang inquiry and all this stuff, I don't think has any, you know, authority to stand on saying think of the children. And, you know, I bet there's people in Labour and the Conservatives, you know, I'm not going to single them out. I bet both major parties have got politicians and are probably nonces. Like, I'm not naming any individually. I'm just saying there are probably nonces in Parliament, right? Like there were at the BBC and everywhere else. So these are the last people I want to fucking lecture me on, like, think of the children. But they keep literally doing the thing now as a smear, don't they? Where, oh, if you're not for all these authoritarian control measures, you're probably a paedophile or a paedophile supporter. It's like, no, fuck off. Yeah, the only problem, random user, like I said, is just like get said now and again, I'll have people come back and like, oh, I'd not been informed you'd done a video like for months or years. And I've had that with other channels I watch and like their content where YouTube randomly just decides, despite the fact you like their content and watch it regularly, we're just going to stop showing it you. Like, so again, like sometimes the YouTube algorithm works for me and other channels, sometimes it doesn't. I don't, like I said, I'm not going to go around like, you know, every like couple of weeks changing how I format my videos because I think it's what appeals to the algorithm more at the moment. Like, I do a lot more shorts now because shorts are easier for me to film when I don't have as much time. And shorts tend to get a lot more views, but they're a lot worse for ad revenue. So what I'm tending to do now is like once a week trying to do a longer video, but like mostly do shorts for every other day of the week. And shorts also make it easier to cover something in a video that I otherwise wouldn't do a video on, you know, because it, like I said, if it's 3 minutes or less, it's a lot less effort to put it together than it is a longer video. In East Germany, the streets looked a lot cleaner. And the Stasi over there and that were well dressed, whereas I doubt the stormtroopers will be well dressed. I bet they'll look stupid. So, yeah. Sometimes I think when we look at totalitarian countries now, the way we're heading, I'm sort of envious of those totalitarian countries, because the funny thing is with some of the shithole totalitarian countries, they could at least get some things right. Like, you know, you could at least look at, let's say, Funny Moustache Man's Germany and like the Hugo Boss uniforms, even if you hated everything else they did. And at least the commies had commie blocks to live in. You know, but we're in a dystopian, we're heading in a thing where housing is getting worse and worse in terms of the country being overpopulated with lack of housing and like rent prices and, you know, housing prices becoming more and more unaffordable. But, like, we're going in that direction, but also having like this weird anarcho-tyranny thing of where people can be arrested for things they say, but lots of hardened criminals seem to get away with stuff. So like we're saying, like you get people that are arrested very quickly or like questioned or whatever for saying something online, posting on Twitter or whatever, or doing a YouTube thing or whatever, but criminals that go around mugging people for like weeks or months aren't caught until they eventually do a much worse crime. And then you think, why didn't the police investigate the muggings more seriously than hurty words online? Because again, like I said, it's not like, again, with all the hate speech stuff, I think I'm not like one of those people that's a free speech absolutist, because again, that's because when you boil the arguments down, people that say, oh, I'm a free speech absolutist, still basically then go, oh, but we should have a rule for this. It's like, because even in America with the First Amendment, you can't yell fire in a movie theater if there's no fire and things like that. You know, they do have rules because people just being a fucking nuisance are a problem in themselves. So you do have to have some sort of thing. It's a bit like all the shit in Minnesota where the people banging the pots and pans all night long. You know, it's like now they're finally, the police there are finally starting to round them up. You know, but it's like that sort of thing is that, you know, oh, it's my First Amendment right to just stand here being a nuisance for hours and hours and hours. I'll open the can of worms a bit, Saint. Like, I think ICE is too heavy-handed and probably not professional enough as it should be. Like, and again, this is only my understanding of it, because with all this stuff, you're always going to get a looking glass of it through whichever media thing you look through and whatever else. But it also seems like the Minnesota State and Tim Walz has been on purposely obstructing ICE as much as possible, making the situation escalate. And it's one of those things where I think like Asmongold's take on it was actually quite good, that if the Minnesota Police Department had been allowed to do their jobs properly, from day one, you wouldn't have had the two people that got killed because they'd have been arrested for less serious stuff before they kept escalating. Because like the guy that was shot the other day, but apparently already had like several altercations and he just kept escalating. And like, you know, the time he was shot dead was when he like got into a brawl with officers while he had a gun on him. And that doesn't mean that they were justified in shooting him, because again, I keep seeing people make the argument either way on that, and I haven't seen body cam footage or whatever, I don't know. But, you know, like again, there's so many situations, though, like, say, even in this country, where if the police upheld all the laws evenly, you wouldn't get people being specifically angry about one issue. But it's when we get all this fucking two-tier policing and everything else, where one group is allowed to do whatever they want in protests because politicians are scared of losing their vote or whatever if they, like, let the police go after them. What's flock cameras again? Don't even know about that. I've heard there's like loads of, like, not WhatsApp groups, but similar, not Telegram, it was another, like, whatever, you know, group thing, like group chat like that, where loads of groups have been exposed now, where like people were basically just look, because they were like doing random witch hunts, weren't they? Where they're like, that car's got out of, I don't know, they don't talk like that in Minnesota, but still, that car's got out of state plates. They must be one of them ass boys. Let's follow them and harass them, boys. Yeah, exactly. Like, Antifa is definitely, because again, like, I keep hearing like lefty people that brush Antifa off like it doesn't exist as a threat, but it does. Like, I should have brought the book into the room, but I've got quite an interesting long book I need to read properly because I bought it more as a reference book, where I quite like history books as reference books. And it's on about, you know, the fake, false left political divide when it comes to authoritarianism. Again, I wouldn't know what fucking state it would be. They'd talk like that random user. It's my generic American voice. But yeah, like where they have, you know, like in loads of systems, it's like, you know, I keep trying to explain this to people. And again, like, and I know a lot of other people explain this better than me. It's the thing of, if there is an authoritarian government that is stomping on your face with some sort of jackboot, it probably doesn't matter too much if it's a left or right one or a religious government or whatever else. It's one of those things where, you know, in general, it's kind of one of those things where people are like, oh, left is really good, right is really good. You know, you more want a government that's accountable if you live in a democracy. I got the IP5, I can't remember if I got from B Store. The IP4M, I can't remember if I got from B Store, but other than eBay or Etsy, I wouldn't really know where to look. Because like I've said, Etsy now and again is sometimes better for old milsurp than eBay is. I don't know why, but it seems a lot of milsurp sellers have moved to Etsy rather than eBay. Because it was through Etsy I got a couple of my, like, much harder to find Soviet radiation detectors. Nearly all those sellers were in Ukraine, funnily enough, as well. One was Romanian, but or might have been Bulgarian, I can't remember now. But, you know, it's one of those funny things where Etsy is sometimes good for shit like that. Oh, but I'll go back to what Saint was saying. So, facial recognition cameras that are owned by private companies and police agencies can use them, but people can basically pay to access people driving. Yeah, again, this is the problem, I think, of a lot of corporations doing stuff rather than the government. Again, it's like one of those, you know, where people like anarcho-capitalists will say it's great. Yeah, again, this is the funny thing, isn't it, where like presidents and that pardon certain people, like how Hunter Biden was pardoned by his dad, even though he said he wouldn't, and all that sort of stuff. All right, crack and grind. But yeah, like saying I don't trust private companies with this stuff, just like I don't trust governments with this stuff. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff like this, because again, it's like, even if it's not a company with bad intentions, we've seen loads of examples where companies have loads of people's personal information, then those companies get hacked and held to ransom. You know, so it's not like, you know, I think it works well if it's either private or thing. Again, with a lot of stuff like this, I'm not pretending I have particular answers for any of it, you know. Like I said, you can tell when something's bad. It doesn't mean, you know, because like I said, it's much easier to criticize and come up with a good solution. But, you know, you can generally point out if something's broken, and say, like, this is broken, we need to come up with something better. But, you know, I wouldn't necessarily be the person to say, wow, I would prefer option A to option B. You know, I'd want smarter people in that field to look into it. That's generally why I think in most fields it works best, where experts in that field are the people that make decisions in it, not people that are having political pressure put on them or whatever else. Yeah, like I said, so again, like that's like, so that's definitely a problem. But also, again, is that a thing where the stalker could have just randomly gone around filming them anyway? But again, it's why, like, again, filming in public again is like one of those weird things where I think people should always be allowed to film the police or whatever, if they're being arrested or whatever, or having an interaction with the police. Just like the police should always have body cams, so there's like two sets of evidence, you know. So if the body cam footage goes missing or gets edited, you can have the, you know, original and vice versa. Because obviously a lot of people will unfairly clip bits where they're interacting with the police in video clips as well. But yeah, but then you get people that just go around harassing people with cameras, and it's like I said, I don't have the answer to it. But again, I know there was a thing similar to this the other day, well, sort of similar, that I heard where like, you know how problem gamblers can opt out of gambling. But the problem is, problem gamblers opting out of gambling only helps them opt out from responsible gambling companies. And then what happens is their name is on a database where criminal gambling organizations consider them a fucking target. And, like, you know, people have then committed suicide because they've been, you know, gambled into massive, like, loan shark debt with rigged games and stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, so all of these, you know, things have problems. And there was another example like that. I can't remember what it was now off the top of my head. Well, it's probably where I was thinking of the Online Safety Act, where it's like people aren't, like, you know, Pornhub is like, oh, we're blocking people from the UK accessing now. And like politicians are going to spin that as a win. They're like, see, Pornhub is down 77%. My Labour government is doing a great job. This is protecting the children, blah, blah, blah. But like we said, these kids are smart enough to use the VPN. And I'd be much more worried about a kid using a VPN, something like Tor, to go onto, you know, a much dodgier website where they might get exploited than some public-facing thing where, you know, all the videos are actual more like actors and actresses rather than, you know, people that might be being exploited in the videos or underage, or, you know, your data is being harvested when you're on the site. Yeah, see, so that's the problem. I literally think with the police, again, as like a civil thing, I think each officer should have two separate body cams on them so they can never have the excuse of, oh, one wasn't working or we had it covered with our arm while we were doing something. And I think for accountability, they should always be forced to release the body cam footage, because it's one of those things where I think that would give people more faith in the police, because it doesn't look like they're trying to hide anything. But the problem, yeah, like I said, with a lot of police things is the fact that it seems like with all the freedom of information requests, they can be very, you know, like selective about how they do it. Yeah, that's why I like Ryler in some places in America where they seem almost out of habit if like an incident happens, that the like official sheriff's office or whatever uploads all the footage of that incident in one go, because then you can see literally every officer's dash cam and body cam regarding like a shooting or something like that. Um, you know, yeah, again, saying that's what the UK government likes in most of the freedom of information requests, is everything is sensitive info or not in the public's interest, even if it blatantly is, and it's how our money is being spent. Um, Again, I'll have to probably stop soon because, like I said, my chest is still quite sore with what I've had. For the people that didn't read my thing, I think now I have actually had an infection rather than because I thought to start with I maybe got a bit of fiberglass down me from the attic or something like that. Because for a couple of days it was just on Saturday, basically Saturday evening, I was fine all day. In the evening, like a bit before I was planning on streaming or whatever, um, basically, you know, I just started like coughing like crazy, you know, to the point where like you're really hurting yourself coughing and you can't stop, you know. And I did get like phlegm up and kind of sick, but it wasn't real sick, you know, that kind of thing. Because I've had like one of those vomiting bugs before, you know, where you can't stop being sick, and it wasn't like that. Um, so I thought it was more like I'd irritated myself, you know, where like something had got down my throat. Because I've had that before where like, you know, I've breathed something really horrible in, then, you know, once you get it out of you, you're fine. And then I thought, what's happened is, you know, I've just really pulled the muscles in my chest, and then I was fine the next day and was just really sore. But now, because I've had a runny nose and a bit of a sore throat today and an upset stomach, I think it's a case that, you know, I probably had an infection that started off in my chest there, and now it's on its way out. It's moved more into like a head cold. No, I don't think it warrants a chest X-ray because, like I said, it's already been getting better. If it had been as bad as it was on day one for like several days in a row, then yes. But again, if you, in my personal opinion, with like stuff like X-rays and stuff like that, if you have something that starts getting better on its own, it's probably not anything to worry about. That sounds cool, Kevin, but no, I haven't seen any of that. And again, YouTube annoyingly probably won't let me talk about much of that on the stream. But yeah, right, audio, because like I said, the annoying thing for me is where I've got ulcerative colitis, although since I've not had the stress of the job I was last doing, that's been flaring up way less and that's been way more under control, which is great. I'm still like weak immunally, so I still have the problem that like I can be completely fine and healthy, it seems, for like 1 week, probably come literally a yard or so away from somebody that's got a fucking cold, and then I get the cold. So like in the last week I hadn't really been out in public much, except for one day at a restaurant. And again, based on incubation times, maybe it was the day at the restaurant that made me ill, when we went out for my dad's birthday, like a late birthday meal. But there's lots of things like that. It could have been that because that was like a week before. But then there was also one day where I went to the pharmacy, and if you pick up like parcels, again, even though I do generally wash my hands after opening a parcel, again, unless you're washing like really thoroughly with bleach and that, there's probably possible to get germs from that it wasn't a Chinese meal, it was a beef eater. So it was like pub food. Again, there wasn't anything wrong with the food. But the problem is if you go to a crowded restaurant, again, if they're recycling the air or whatever, that was the problem. My old job is that the company kept in the winter closing the doors up and circling all the air around the heater with a fan. So if somebody was coughing and sneezing in the building, it would be wafted around by like the air unit. I had some beef Wellington crisps the other day that were quite nice, actually. Some Walker's ones, but with like where my chest's been sore, anything that might give me slight acid reflux stuff I need to avoid. And that was like the seasoning on those, although it tasted really good, was definitely ones that kind of irritated my like. So Akri said, can I do kabuki masks? Are those the Japanese masks? If so, if they're nothing to do with milsurp, I probably have no interest in them. Are they like the theatre masks? Yeah. Demons on your Kitsumi, ornate. Yes, they're Japanese theatre masks. Exactly what I thought they were. Not really got any interest in those, I'm afraid. Again, cool for people that are into them. I'm sure there's lots of channels that are really good at doing videos on them, but I don't see the reason for me to get a load and do videos on them, where I'd literally just be reading up on them and then presenting it like I know stuff about them. You could argue I do that with other content, but at least I'm interested in the other content. Because again, it's like where I hadn't done a lighter video for ages, because I actually saw a new kind of lighter design I hadn't seen before. I bought one. I've got a video coming out on this. It's a short. But this is like one of those kind of survival lighters, but it's from the electric arc types. And it's fixed most of the problems I traditionally had with these. Whether or not any of the designers watched my videos and saw my complaints, I don't know. So this one's got a fairly bright flashlight on it, which is actually pretty good. So it's got that, and it's all like a waterproof case that floats with, like the kind of like waterproof seal. And then it's an electric arc one, but this one's really good because you can pull the electric arc bit out like that, and you don't have to worry about it not reaching something like I had with the other ones, because it's like got the thing in an actual thing, and it's got a power indicator thing with 4 lights as well. So yeah, and like I said, the flashlight on this is surprisingly good. And it's also got a whistle that probably hurt me to breathe through with like my chest. But let's have a go. Well, it's upside down, isn't it? Yeah, that's not too bad. I think it's one of those adjustable ones, isn't it? Yeah, you adjust it into a different position, I think, for different volumes. Which is the best position for like maximum volume then? But yeah, again, this is just a lanyard. Again, it's not as good as a really good survival whistle, but it's nice. It's on there. So it's one of those things that, you know, I hadn't done a lighter video in ages, but this one was good enough that I thought, oh, that's actually quite interesting, and I'd like to do a video on it. Because, again, I might use this one more, in all honesty, for the handy little flashlight on it. Because, again, this is a small thing with a decent flashlight on it. Like, I was surprised how good an LED flash... Oh, it has a strobe on it as well. I never even realised that. So, would you press it quite quickly for a strobe? Okay, so it's, I think, bright. I think low. Yeah, strobe. So, yeah, it has a strobe. It's not a really fast strobe. An epilepsy warning. But, yeah, this is... So, it's actually a better flashlight than I thought. I haven't tried to run the battery down yet, but like I said, I'm probably going to be using it more than a lighter using the flashlight function. So I'm not going to charge it until I run it down. And bear in mind, it came saying it was 4 bars full on the battery thing. I haven't given it a full charge from scratch. But yeah, right, I'll have to just test it. But if the little LED on it is like most ones, and the light thing is like most ones, I imagine you'd get a few hours of usage out of it. It did have a card, but I don't think it tells you necessarily on it how long the stuff lasts. And Kevin, yeah, those are yeah, Halloween free masks. They're Don Post masks, aren't they? And it's, yeah, the skeleton, witch, and pumpkin jack-o'-lantern that came out prior to the film, but so they weren't made exclusively for the film, but because Don Post made enough of them, and I think the Silver Shamrock scenes are actually filmed in the Don Post real factory, aren't they? I'm going to check it is called Don Post. I'm not just coming out with a random name there. Don Post. Yeah, Don Post masks, Don Post Studios. But yeah, so I could buy, again, if I had more money, I could buy the pumpkin, the skull mask, or the witch mask from Halloween 3 for, oh, they're cheaper than I thought. Okay, so why is there 2 different versions of the pumpkin mask? Oh, because the injection one's going to be like the cheaper one, isn't it? So it's £50, but it's out of stock. Yeah, if they do a rerun of those, and again, I don't know if it's one that they do limited time productions of around Halloween or whatever, that's because that's not too much money. I'm kind of tempted to get the jack-o'-lantern mask just because I like Halloween 3 so much. But yeah, so I was right about it being Don Post, but like I said, I only know really about masks like that, and say like Michael Myers mask being the William Shatner mask. They cut the eye holes bigger and spray painted like that white grey colour, because I actually genuinely like the films and watched a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. And again, I know Halloween 3 technically isn't John Carpenter that directed it, it's Tommy Lee Wallace, isn't it? I think. I'm going to check that up. But in some ways, Halloween 3 feels like a John Carpenter film for me because he did so much other stuff in it. Yeah, it was Tommy Lee Wallace. Because Tommy Lee Wallace did other stuff on John Carpenter films, like, you know, John Carpenter directed them, Tommy Lee Wallace did other stuff on them. And then it kind of switched around for Halloween 3, where John Carpenter did a load of, like, the writing and, like, the soundtrack and other stuff. To me, Halloween 3 feels like a John Carpenter movie, even if it isn't. It's like, so I consider it, like, you know, as good as a lot of the John Carpenter films, even if it isn't. And again, interestingly, written by Nigel Neal, the British science fiction author. But then he had his name taken away from it because he didn't like the end product or whatever. But so it was like the Quatermass guy that worked with John Carpenter writing the script. No proper prepping groups. Like I said, with prepping stuff, I think it's good to have stuff yourself, but I'm not like really serious into you know, if you're into them, that's cool and everything. And it's like, for some people, I know it's like quite a good hobby. For me, it's like the prepping stuff. It's like, I always think it's good to have certain prepping things around, so you're better prepared than some of the people that have like nothing in their house at all. Because what amazes me is where some people don't stockpile any food. And I don't mean stockpiling, you know, like a crazy person or whatever, but, you know, like where they're like, oh, because I couldn't go to the shops for one day, like, you know, the people that do a tiny shop every day of the week. And then because they couldn't go to the shops one day, they're like, oh, I've got nothing to eat today. So I'm one of those people that thinks you should always have maybe like a week's worth of food, just because before we've had like heavy snow in our area, like once or twice, where, you know, it's been really inconvenient to get places for a couple of days. You wouldn't want to take the car somewhere. No, I mean, I don't stockpile toilet paper because I've got the ulcerative colitis. I always keep quite a lot of it. And I always make sure I keep quite a lot near the bathroom as well. because that's one of the problems where, like, I can go from not needing much toilet paper in a day, and if my colitis is bad or whatever, going through a few rolls a day when I'm shitting my guts out. Yeah, so I'm not like one of the people that drove the prices up of toilet paper in COVID, but yeah, toilet paper is one of those things, and you can use it to blow your nose and other stuff, can't you? So it's not blow your trumpet as well, not your nose. Wipe up stains. Yeah, baby wipes are great, but you can't flush them down the toilet. And people that do clogged sewers, I know you could throw them in the trash, but the problem is a lot of people don't. But like I was trying to explain something about baby wipes. I went on holiday, and one of my friends, he sometimes watches the stream, so I might get an earful about this afterwards. Because last time I mentioned him, he was like, "Oh, thanks for talking about me on the stream." But he forgot to pack his like wash bag like with a flannel on that when we went on holiday for a boys' holiday for a few days, and he couldn't find in any of the shops like a flannel, like a wash flannel, like the reusable ones that you put soapy water on, wash with, and then like wash them off kind of thing. So I said to him, just buy a pack of baby wipes, like wipe yourself with them and then bin them. And it was like such a foreign idea to him. I was like, people do that at festivals and things all the time. Like baby wipes are great for personal hygiene. He didn't believe me. He like didn't think it was a thing. I was like, you don't have to flush them down the toilet. You can be, responsible, put them in a regular bin bag. But I was like, if you only need a flannel for a few days, buy one pack of baby wipes, like sterilizer wipes, the ones that are skin safe, just use a couple on your body each day and bin them. Because again, I know that's like what a lot of soldiers and people like out in doing bushcraft stuff do for like if they're out in the wilderness for ages. Yeah, honey as well, saint for stuff like that. Again, the only problem I have with honey is although honey doesn't really go off, so it's kind of good in terms of not expiring in that regard. Honey isn't great if you live somewhere like that can get cold in the winters because that's when it all crystallizes. And I know with honey, in theory, you can put the bottle of honey into like seal the bottle up, put it into a bottle of like boiling water, and the crystal should deform, but it never goes back to being proper runny honey again. Like you can still eat it, but it's still always very crystallized, honeycombed after that. So honey is one of those ones where I always have like 6 cheapo squeezy bottles of honey at once. We also have some like much nicer honey if you're using it for something where you really want to just taste the honey, not as a sweetener. Yeah, Kevin. So yeah, you like I said, I only know because of like stuff I've read about, and watched on about like military stuff and like survival stuff that baby wipes are great. But like I said, it was just explaining it to one of my friends, he just didn't get it. And even after I kept trying to convince him, he's like, "Oh, just go without any hygiene stuff then." I was like, but there's literally a store really close to our holiday place where we've been buying beer, and you've been going in there with me every day to buy shitloads of beer and that. But you're not going to buy the baby wipes from the same place. I mean, I do kind of wonder what the cashier thinks if you're buying like maybe baby wipes with a load of beer, but who cares? Because there's always I kind of think about those awkward combinations of items where if maybe it's a bit like buying steel pipe and like the pipe end caps, and especially if it's a store that sells fertilizer at the same time. Yeah, there's a few things like flour that are like that, Saint. But again, I'm not an expert on which things, but yeah, like stock things that you can have in bulk that as long as you store them properly, like say, you don't need a really full climate controlled kitchen, like air conditioner and all that. If you've not got a kitchen that gets like damp, because the problem with our kitchen is the way the house was built, is the kitchen gets very humid at some times of the year, like very cold at other times. And stuff like that. So it's like we've got a kitchen where I've noticed even stuff in tubs that should be sealed. Yeah, rice and porridge oats for the same reason. Very good for long-term storage. But yeah, we in our kitchen, I've got the annoying thing that even stuff that should be in airtight tubs, once you break the original seal, like if you don't eat it within a month, it starts to go bad just because of like the high humidity in the UK. And because like our kitchen is like, again, in some houses you wouldn't have this problem at all, but our one is like, the kitchen, if somebody's boiling a pot on the stove, for example, the windows will steam up and it will stay humid for a while, a bit like the bathroom. And then, if it's if it's a really cold day, the kitchen is absolutely freezing in the morning. It's always the coldest room in the house. Yeah, what was the other thing, Zach? I'm trying to think what people were fighting over during COVID. I know people were stockpiling masks as well, because prior to, crazy thing for people that didn't get into gas masks before COVID, um, it's what was I going to say? Prior to COVID, gas masks were sensible prices. I mean, they've kind of got, some of them have gone back to that now, but it was one of those things that you could get gas masks. You know, some of them were still cheap as milsurp, even the really good ones. I've heard of Huel. Is that like an energy drink or like one of the other like hydration drinks? Plant-based meals, snack drinks, and food supplements. Okay. But yeah, like again, if you're actually actively eating the stuff, I think it's not as bad. Because like I said, what I do, like I said, Caesar, is the stuff we have in our cupboard, like as the stuff goes out of date is when I eat it up. And I always eat the oldest stuff first. So, you know, most of the stuff in the cupboard is always in date and properly sealed anyway. But, you know, it's like I said before, a lot of the canned food, I will happily eat that even if it was 5-10 years out of date, if the tin is fine. Because, as you know, because of how they process those things when they seal them up, they're not magically going to expire. You know, the longer they go out of date, the more risky they are. Yeah. You can't wear a mask that's actually effective against COVID. You have to wear a mask that's not really going to do anything to help you or other people. Yeah, again, that's the problem I have with the pro-mask people, is they're generally not pro-good masks. Like I said, if how they should design a mask, if they wanted to make a COVID kind of mask, and again, I am going to go soon, because I'm surprised I lasted an hour on this stream, because my throat is going a bit now as well. Yeah, same with me. I got my like retaining wage thing from my job, but didn't have to go there. So I like had the most earning money I ever had, and my YouTube money was the best it ever was as well. So like, you know, I could live gluttonously, and still, well, say COVID was nuts. Yeah, I think it was. It was crazy. Oh well, please say the gas masks for cheap in the German accent. Yeah, the gas masks are cheaper on the other side of the square. Yeah, what I was going to say is the best way people could have made a gas mask, if they wanted to make one for like COVID, is a filtered intake and a filtered outtake. You know, like the outtake filter only really needs to be like a surgical tier mask. But yeah, you could do a mask like that, and then everybody is protected breathing in, everybody is protected breathing out, and like nobody is going to catch it or spread it to each other. But like I said, the problem with a lot of the real gas masks is, as much as I'm kind of like YOLO, yeah, fuck everyone else. Yeah, I do kind of feel bad if other people were going to the effort of wearing something like a surgical mask that does stop your spittle flying on other people. You know, compared to a gas mask where your breathed out air and that is going directly out the airport, not even through anything. Because the surgical masks do something. Like, even though they're not very good at protecting you from stuff, they do stop like droplets from your mouth going everywhere else. Yeah, I did try on some of my masks putting like a surgical mask over the exhale valve on some masks. Some masks it worked all right, some not so much. Yeah, I don't know. Like a lot of other countries, Ryla, that had civil defense masks basically did the thing where the militaries, for obvious reason, got the better, sturdier masks, and civilians got a good enough mask. So we'd have probably done what like the Swedish and other countries did, that after the C7, we'd have probably at some point got a very cheap 40mm mask. So the filters would have been replaceable. The mask would probably have been a bit better quality, but you know, it still would have been quite basic mask. Like a good example of this, although I don't think it's 40mm, is that cool Swedish mask I've got. Let me look that up because I can't remember the name of it. So the Swedish civil defense mask, and again, it's not the Forshida, that was the one that replaced it, and it's not the old Folk gas mask, because that's the one that came before it. But I'm thinking of the Swedish one that's a bit like the Finnish M71, but it's not a Finnish M71. Um, yeah, if I remember right, I thought there was a Swedish one that had like a screw-in filter, but it wasn't a 40mm one. It was almost like a unique filter for that mask, but it was still like better than, just having a taped on filter. Like for logistics reason, I don't know why they didn't do that. I was going to search across my channel. Oh yeah, it's the Folkskida mask Type 33. I'll get a picture of it up. This thing, I have done a video on it. But yeah. But yeah, I think getting rid of a lot of the civil defense stuff is a complete mistake in a lot of countries. Just because in general, it prepared people a lot more for, general problems, like, because again, a lot of civil defense stuff doesn't just have to be used for like an end day scenario. Because here's the thing, if you have people trained in all the civil defense stuff, and then you have like a flood or a hurricane or something like that, your survival rate and people not doing stupid shit is going to be a lot lower if they've got civil defense training than if they don't. Because people have basic survival knowledge, like, and if everybody had to learn a bit of how to, bandage a wound, like how to filter water properly and all this, you'd get a lot less problems, in my opinion. But yeah, so that was the Swedish mask I was on about. So like I said, it's that one's weird because it's got a filter on it that is kind of replaceable, but you're never going to find replacement filters. A bit like the cheek filter masks, where although they had obviously a lot more filters built for them, but it's that kind of thing where it's kind of like a long it's probably a proper use of the word obsolete. It's an obsolete filter design that nobody's going to still make those filters, and like the stockpile of them has long since expired, but it was still a good, yeah. Although I think Raj saying that a lot of governments don't like the idea of people having skills now, because again, before I go off, and again, like I said, look, my chest is getting tighter and tighter now on my throat, so we'll have to go off soon. But like I said, I'm surprised I'm an hour. In World War II, the government liked the idea that people could actually know how to farm stuff in their garden, kind of grow their own food, know how to make food last as long as possible through like rationing and stuff like that, and like civil defense things. And also obviously, like, I'm surprised the British Home Guard manual isn't now classed as a terrorist training book, because a lot of similar books are on the British government's thing, because that was like the anarchist cookbook of its day, right? The Home Guard manual, because it was literally like, oh, here's how you can make improvised weapons to use against Germans that are invading if the government hasn't given you your Lee Enfield and a load of ammo. Like, here's improvised anti-tank weapons and stuff like that. Can you imagine if how the government would have a fit over that today? Yeah, exactly the same sort of thing, Kevin. And I think the reason that's different is that in World War II, Britain still very much had like our equivalent of the Second Amendment. Obviously, it wasn't called that, but civilians could own firearms and they weren't confiscated during the war and stuff like that. And it was considered a good thing, because if German paratroopers landed, you'd probably have people with shotguns and hunting rifles, and like just who recreationally owned pistols that could go hunting for Germans. So it's one of these things that but again, the government's mindset's completely changed, because they've infantilized everybody. They want everybody to be as consumerist as possible, so they can make money from you being a consumerist. And the government always wants to kind of do the nanny state thing of taking away more and more of your own liberties, so they can do what's best for you, even though they fuck that up, obviously. And again, like I said, I'm not one of those people that thinks we should have no government at all, but in general, I like the idea that lots of things you should be allowed to do yourself, because, if somebody then doesn't do the thing, it's their own fault. Whereas, I can see lots of scenarios where the government fucks up stuff, it then, doesn't let people do itself, and then you're completely fucked if that happens. Yeah, Zach, Katrina, I've heard from one of my American viewers, was very much like a fucking Mad Max thing. Um, like, there were signs that, weren't they, like, looters are going to get shot if they come into this neighborhood. And, yeah, I can understand that. And again, I bet you Katrina is like one of those things where, even though the people who were safest were probably the best armed people that had, like, decent amounts of stuff stored in their house, they were the exact kind of people lots of governments don't like. the government would like you all to be the kind of people that a criminal could just come in with a gun and do whatever they want to you. Yeah, Roger. But again, like I said, I'm one of those people that's like I said, I don't have all the answers, but I can generally say that the World War II model Britain had worked fucking better than what we've got today. I'm gonna have to fucking look this up now. Katrina Superdome, and then I can wish I didn't. Apparently, there were only 3 deaths: 2 elderly medical patients who were suffering from existing illness, and a man that committed a word we can't say on YouTube by jumping from the upper level seats. But in the press, they were reporting on, violent SA and physical assaults and stuff like that. And I can completely believe that. If, there were barely any police and that there, and, you've got lots of gangs in there and stuff like that. Yeah, that's a thing, Kevin. So if they confiscate your guns, again, then it's easier for you to become a victim, isn't it? And I thought the whole point of the Second Amendment was that, the government doesn't have the right to do that. I've got a tiny bit of gold. My dad used to have quite a lot of gold coins, but I think he sold most of those. And I know a load of people that do have gold and silver. But again, I trust, to be completely honest, I would trust having assets in gold and silver more than I would money in a bank account and lots of other stuff. But the other problem is you need a way of defending that gold and silver. In the UK, you can't legally do that. So if the government just randomly decides they're going to stop you having gold and silver, I bet you the government would send the stormtroopers to kick your door in to confiscate your gold and silver, then say it's to protect the children from the PDF file far right. And hello, Godzilla. My voice is already going now, so I'm going to have to go. Got my giant sippy bottle. So I stay hydrated. But yeah, but like I said, if things really go to shit, silver and gold almost become worthless, don't they? It's the reason I kind of think Metro's barter system of ammunition makes a lot of sense. Because in a post-apocalyptic thing, something that you need to survive, like ammo, would be very good to exchange for filters, food and water and stuff like that. But yeah, again, if stuff goes really bad, a barter system will exist for a reason, because you can say, give me however many of this goods for that good. You don't need a currency to back it up. And again, bartering is great anyway, because the government can't tax you if you barter, as far as I'm aware, because you're not physically changing money. Yeah, like I said though, Gas Mask Allen, I'm not a proper prepper, so again, like I said, I can generally say, I can review a thing and say, do I think it's a good gas mask? Do I think it's a good lighter? A knife, things like that. But I wouldn't be the person to ask about bushcraft, if that makes sense, and stuff like that. Yeah, so he was king of the war zone there then, Kevin. Yeah, so he was that film, what's the film about again? I do need to go, but is it The Man Who Would Be King or something, where one British guy with a rifle decides to make his own African country? The Man Who Would Be King. Let's see. The Man Who Would Be King is a 1975 epic historical adventure film directed by John Huston, adopted from Huston Glady's Hill from Rudyard Kipling's 1888 novella. It stars Sean Connery and Michael Caine in the leading roles, 2 rogue ex-soldiers who set off from late 19th century British India in search of adventure, end up in faraway Kafiristan, wherever that is, where one is taken for a god and made their king. The supporting cast and blah blah blah. But I think it's the fact that they're armed white people, so they can pretend to be God. I think it's again a bit of a Heart of Darkness-y thing, but oh, so it's a historical region of Afghanistan and Pakistan, Kafiristan. But again, there are stands like Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan and that aren't in that region. But yeah, I ought to go, but I'm glad I lasted over an hour on this stream. Don't forget to like the stream, everybody. And yeah, like I said, I'm hoping to be streaming pretty much every day again now. But like I said, because it seems like my symptoms are getting better each day, it's just one of those fucking annoying things. I was at least glad I had a load of videos pre-filmed and uploaded, because it is bloody annoying where, you know, you want to do content for YouTube, but, you know, if you're feeling really fucking shit, you know, like saying the other day, it was hurting me just to talk more than a couple of like sentences at a time because of how sore my chest was. But the Home Guard manual, I might get myself a copy of that, and then we can talk. I know the government will eventually ban it, and maybe they'll use that as the reason to Home Guard manual 1941. I can get a paperback. For $9.99, I might get it. If this, I think this is the one I'm thinking of. Taught basic fieldcraft, how to survive in the open, how to destroy tanks, ambush the invaders, make booby traps. Right, yeah. So it is the retro anarchist cookbook. So yeah, I am going to buy that now, and that should come Friday. And then I'll do a book review on it, because there are a lot of history books I need to actually read properly and re-talk about. Because like I said, with a lot of stuff like 1984, a lot of it is very relevant. And again, although I prefer books in the audiobook content, because then I can multitask with basic things while listening to an audiobook, and I take them in well as an audiobook. You know, books are sadly like one of those knowledge forms, I think, of a lot of younger people. Unless there's a video made on something, they don't know about it. So, you know, maybe it'll be useful for people if I can read some of these books and then summarize them easily as a video for people. The Home Guard manual, the one that was a government issued thing, a bit like an anarchist cookbook of its day, and it was issued by the government about how to kill Germans if they invaded Britain. You know, so it was, like I said, it's the completely wacky timeline, like I was saying, where compared to the government now, which bans books like that, and it can put additional. Okay, and before I go off, just to explain this, I don't have an anarchist cookbook, and if I did, I'd have it as a PDF file that was encrypted. But yeah, it's funny how like an actual good anarchist cookbook, yeah, is the one that they associate about. But yeah, so in the UK, like, oh, and you've done it again, Rajiv, just as I'm going off. In the UK, we've got the fucking weird thing where I think these illegal books, Dankula did a video on it. Yeah, but again, like the Looty book, it's one where I think technically owning it isn't illegal, but if they do you for basically any crime, they search your house, they can literally slap more years on your sentence for owning the book. Which is, again, why if you did have a copy of those things, I'd say put them in a really good encrypted way that, you know, they're never going to have the time to bother breaking your password with good encryption to check which PDF files you have. And when I say PDF files, I mean, yeah, and some of the stuff about making firearms, Roger, looks kind of like not even proper stuff. But again, that's the looty kind of stuff is the sort of stuff I can't actually talk about on YouTube, because I don't really give a shit if Keir Stalin doesn't like me talking about it, but it violates a lot of YouTube policies, Albanian guns. So, yes, that's why we only have slight mentions of people like Looty on here. But again, I think the reason they don't like people like Looty is he proves that just because you simply stop people from buying something, if people have tools, they will find a way. You know, and like Sten guns and things like that did prove in World War II that, you know, dog shit SMGs are a viable thing. So, yeah. The really good type of encryption, I can't remember the word for it, and I keep saying I'm going off and then don't, is, I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's like the one that's like the gold standard encryption thing, because it's the type some of my radios use for their encryption. But I can't remember the thing for it. Is it something 256 encryption? Yeah, AES 256 is one of the best types. Yeah, so it's something you can access very easily, AES 256, and most governments can't fucking crack it unless they put a lot of time and effort into it. So it's one of those things that, you know, if you did have something slightly questionable, I would keep stuff like that encrypted on your PC. And again, I'm not saying stuff here that, like, you know, because the government would love to say, oh, are you to support, like, noncing of children? Because no, if you have that stuff, you know, on your PC, I really hope bad stuff does happen to you. But I'm on about the fucking, you know, excuse they're using for everything now, where everybody is a PDF file. If, you know, they basically don't support everything the government's doing with its authoritarian, let's look at everything you're doing things, because, you know, you must want to exploit kids if you're scared of showing everything you're doing online. But like I said, if it was for manuals and things like that, yeah, Ready or Not is good. Also, I haven't played that in a while, so I might have to, but Ground Branch is another one like that, Kevin. There's also another one I like that, Operation Red River, is it? Which is like a single-player Tarkov. But yeah, all three of those are very good, you know, like putting different optics on the rail and different flashlights. But yeah, again, my chest is getting sore now, so I ought to stop. But what was it I was saying about? But yeah, if just for example you had maybe books that the government didn't like you to own, because again, like I said, in the UK, none of these books are technically illegal. They're just in that really weird thing where I personally wouldn't want a physical copy of them somewhere, because you know, once if they search your house, they can just literally use it as, let's slap more years on you because you owned a fucking book. Like, I think Mein Kampf might even be on that list, which is really fucking weird, because Mein Kampf is, if you actually read that, it makes you really kind of not like Hitler. At least it did for me. I mean, I didn't like him anyway, but, you know, it's one of those things where he just kind of seems like a whingy, petulant little bitch. You know, it's not like a book that you're going to read and then suddenly want to start raising your right arm, because it's all about, like, how, oh, it's them Juden, they always putting me down. Like, I was a great person. It's literally like, you know, I can't get a GF because the Jews don't want me to kind of book. But I think Mein Kampf, again, might be on that list. But it's one of those things where I wouldn't like to own them simply because of the fact that, yeah, if they do you for anything and it makes it easier for them to get a conviction and to make your sentence harder, I wouldn't want to have them as a physical copy. But something that's really well encrypted on your hard drive where, yeah, it might be a bit of a ball ache, but every time you wanted to read it, you had to, you know, put a key in that you remember somehow, that you know, don't, it's not like one that's 1, 2, 3, 4 or something. You know, that's probably a better way of doing it, because I have heard from other people sometimes that, like, they got in trouble with the police for stuff, and because they'd gone to such lengths of making their stuff a ball ache for the police to look into, the police eventually left them alone. You know, where if they were an easier conviction, they'd have probably done it, because the police probably want the low hanging fruit of somebody that's, you know, they can easily get, where if the person's well hidden all of their stuff, it's probably also, speaking about stuff like that, that it's the really dumb pedos, sadly, that get caught, and not all of them, because the really, like, good pedos, if you like, and they're horrible people, but, you know, the ones that are skilled at their craft, let's say, are the ones like Epstein and Savile, you know, that are, like, with the top tiers of society. They're probably running it as well, for the rich and famous. They're the ones that get away with it until after their death or whatever. Whereas it's like the dirty little nonce that has the pictures on his broken laptop that he takes to PC World, like Gary Glitter, that are the ones that get caught. And that's where one of my mates got a pedo sent. Sadly, I don't think they sent him to prison, but he did go to court and all that and got put on the sex offenders registry. My mate caught him because he was dumb enough to, you know, ask my friend to repair his computer for him. And my friend, he was like specific, like, don't look in the private folder. I made a folder called private. Don't look in it. And my friend looked in it because he thought he was just going to find gay porn in it, and we could laugh at him for this reason. And then, no, it was fucking, like, the worst child abuse imaginable in there. And he was like, no, fucking phoning the police. Because, you know, it was one of those things of, yeah. But, and again, I would, if I found out one of my friends was a nonce, I wouldn't be a friend with them anymore, you know. But I'd want proper evidence that they were, not the government told me so. Yeah, well, like I'm saying, if the government wants to kill you, they'll just make it look like an accident, won't they? But what I'm saying is encryption, though, is better than physically owning a book if it's a banned book, for example. But again, there's so many like layers of paranoia you can go into. But again, if you lived in a healthy country, you could own certain books in your house and it would never cause an issue. Because even if, say, somebody was a Nazi terrorist, right? Like they planned to go blow up a synagogue, I don't know, and they had Mein Kampf and loads of other like 1488 fan books or whatever, I don't think that should add more time to their prison sentence because they own a load of weird fucking paraphernalia like that. I mean, I think Steam prices should be properly translated between dollars, euros, and pounds, because I think we've got the problem here. The euro, lot complained about for ages. You know, where it's like a game that's $20 might also be £20, or it should be £15. But yeah, but like I said, the UK, if you want to know how dystopian it is anyway, with Guy, you wouldn't even, if you went up to a foreign country, you wouldn't even take your proper phone with you, because of the fact that if you came back, what they do a lot of the time, you just want to burn a phone now, because of the fact they can literally stop anyone at the border, say, give us the pin to your phone and we want to mirror your phone. And if you refuse, they can charge you with terrorist offences. No, I won't, Psychonaut, because you don't want to fucking inject yourself with something like that if it's not an emergency and it's probably a controlled substance. I know people that have bought the auto injectors, and some of them they were absolutely fine with buying. Other ones got them a police visit because it's like buying narcotics or whatever like that. And you know, if you buy some sort of syringe filled with liquid, the government isn't going to be very happy with it, and that stuff has to come through customs, who love looking at your parcels. So no, I won't be reviewing that. Atropine is something I generally wouldn't fuck about with anyway. Like as a civilian, I think if you're in a nerve agent situation that's bad enough to get you killed, you're probably fucked anyway. Atropine is more for soldiers who can administer to each other and have training, and are more likely to encounter that stuff. And maybe say like first responders, not for people like you or me. Like for people like you and me, you just need a load of your sealed filters, training on how to use your mask and stuff like that. But I don't think you really need to fuck about with auto injectors. What, the Home Guard manual, Gilly Guy? Yeah, you can probably get it free online. I saw there were different reprints of it. It's just one of those books I'm surprised the UK government hasn't banned because of the knowledge in it. You know, because if I was to fight against a fascist invading force in my country, let's say, the book has some very good tips on homemade weapons and things like that. So that's why I'm surprised it's not on that naughty book list. So like I said, I'll get it, and then if it goes on the naughty book list, I'll have to just give it to a mate. Because like I said, I've got rid of a couple of like items a while ago that I gave to somebody that I'm friends with. Because basically, like I was saying about with all the blank firing things, that, as it gets to February, they'll get illegal to own. But it's not even practical for me to hand them in at a police station. So I basically found somebody that was happy to take them off me, knowing that they would become illegal in February, and then it's their problem if they've got them after that their date. And it's like I said to them, once you've got them, just don't tell me any more about it, kind of thing. So, they might hand them in on February the 1st, or they might not. Not my problem, because I don't own them anymore. But if the government's not giving me any fucking money for them, like in a buyback, I have to spend my own money to go into a police station and have them like look at me funny and wonder why I'm handing in these blank firing guns that were previously fucking legal, they can fuck off. Because like I said, the previous time I got nothing for them, and it was more effort than what it's worth. And they were like, oh, you're the first person that's come into our police station to hand these in. And they like didn't know the procedure for it. But it was only like one of 3 in like 100-mile area that had a physical desk you could go in and hand them in. So it's like, one of these things where, so nobody actually complied with this ban, did they? There wasn't a 99p one. I think I said $9.99. If you're on about the Home Guard manual, mine was $9.99. I think there was like a ebook one that was cheaper, but again, that was just literally the first results on Amazon. Again, like I said to other people, if you've got stuff like that, don't mention it to me, because I don't want you or me to be liable. Because I've had people before that have got shitty with me because I've like removed their comments and say, yeah, don't mention that you're keeping them. But I'm not, Because like I said, I'm not really going to advise people either way on this. But I've said to other people, don't mention you're keeping them if you're going to keep them. It's a don't ask, don't tell thing. It's probably just because the cameras move slightly. It's depending. It's the mannequins also, although that wasn't in frame, that's fallen over and is looking at the window, because where I was moving stuff around in the drawers underneath it, it fell over and I couldn't get it exactly straight up again. But yeah, and their reason for not doing a buyback, Raja, was literally the bloody excuse that these were always illegal to own, so therefore but you didn't ban them prior, and they had been sold for years legally, and they met all the requirements for a UK blank firearm. But then they keep doing this bollocks of, we did some tests on them and we found they were easily convertible. Fucking did you now? Yeah, imagine if the mannequin had turned, that would be cool. But yeah, but like this is the thing. It's like because like I said, even if something is banned, if they gave you a buyback with the price you paid on them, I wouldn't be as mad. That's cool. I don't have that one, but I've heard of it before. I think Weapon Collectors talked about it before, Nor, so it's another one that I might get. But again, I've got a couple of books in my backlog, so I don't want to get a load of books and then have more books in the backlog. I'll try and read them and then buy another one. Yeah, tap you on the shoulder. But yeah, what was I going to say before I go off? Yeah, it's one of those things that at least if they did a buyback at the price you paid, it doesn't seem as in bad faith. But when they, basically say we're banning something and we're going to make you a criminal if you own this thing, but we're not going to even make it easy to surrender the thing, and then you're getting no compensation for it, that's where I kind of lose even faith recommending people do what the law says, even though I have to do that as a YouTuber on here. And like I said, with those things, because I've publicly done videos on them, I've had to get rid of them. But it's one of those things that after my first experience of having to surrender like 300, 400 quid worth of blank firers, I wasn't going to do it again. Like I said, I was going to give them to somebody else before the date they became illegal, and then said, it's your problem now. You're just make sure you're aware of that and don't talk to me about them ever again, kind of thing. But like I said it, because it's just one of those bollocks things that where they were saying they were easily convertible. Oh, thank you very much. Sazani Ishil, if that's your name, is chill, sorry. Thank you very much. I will like and give you a heart. Cheers. But yeah, like, because where they said easily convertible, on the one picture I found of one, where they said about one they'd caught that had been converted, so many things in that blank fire had been replaced that it would have been easier for somebody to make their own pipe gun. This was the thing. I was kind of like, it's probably the gunsmith, if you like, that's converted this has gone to more work converting one of these blank firers than they would have, putting some pipes together, if you get what I'm getting at, in YouTube friendly terms as I can get at. Yeah, stay at this country indeed. Whereas with these blank firers, like I was saying, I know some people like, in theory, you can like swap them to a 22 LR barrel and all that, but you still have to refit the mag and everything to feed 22 LR, and it wouldn't even do that well. Like I said, with a lot of these blank guns, like, even if somebody converted them fairly well, you've still got bits of the gun that are made out of zinc that I would not trust not to explode when I shot it. Because it's very different firing 9mm blanks than it is an actual pressurized cartridge. And because like most of these blank guns, and again, people don't know this, aren't made to be as good as real guns, specifically for the reason that because they can make a gun cheaper that is like, that you can't really convert very easily, because of the fact that most of the gun's components are kind of cheap shit metal that can't withstand pressure. Yeah, the easiest thing is clubs, Nick, because, and again, I'll answer you before I go off, even though I keep saying I'm going to go off. The easiest way is clubs, but sadly there aren't any really good clubs near me as far as I'm aware anymore. Because the best one that used to exist kind of near me, and I'd have loved to have joined if I'd have known about it earlier, was like a historical shooting club where you could rent things like the Lee Enfields out there. And again, if I hear about one of those shooting days coming up, because now and again I think there are like range days where like money is raised for charity that like the army organize, where you know a soldier stands with his arm on your shoulder letting you shoot like an L85 and you know, like a chain down machine gun or whatever. So you can't easily do yourself or other people in because they've got them chained down or whatever, but you at least get to shoot them down a range at a target. Shooting clubs are the easiest way because you don't need your own sort of license for them. The problem, as I've said before, with licenses is they keep making the licenses harder to get, and the government keeps adding more and more restrictions into like reasons they can take away your license. So the thing I keep saying to people with the license is you're kind of renting a gun, not owning it. Because even if you physically own the gun, the government can literally find any weird fucking excuse to take your guns away, even if you're a very sane person. Because apparently people have done the right thing, have had their guns taken away. You know, like people that have suffered from very mild depression, gone to the doctors and said, you know, maybe can I have like talking therapy or antidepressants because, you know, a close family member's died, you know, and I'm not really coping with it. So they've gone to seek help early on rather than like turning to drink or drugs or whatever. And as a result of them asking for mental health help, they've had all their guns like seized permanently because, oh, that person is going to do a mass shooting, said the government. You know, even though the mass shooters they never catch because the government's inept and all of them were like on the watch lists anyway. Yeah, shoot it 2 times and it jams. Maybe you get to keep shooting it until your L85A1 jams, and then as soon as it jams, you have to give up your range day. And like, yeah, you won't make it more than a couple of shots without an L85 jamming. Maybe it's like one of those scam events. So, but yeah, but like I said, so where I've seen a lot of the UK examples, there's stuff where, you know, like it seems like for like political opinions and stuff like this, even though the government claims it never does it for political opinions, but they're getting worse and worse with how they're doing stuff against right and left wing people that aren't pro Labour. Like I said, I would not want to own a gun now just because of the fact I'd be like paranoid every day that the government would just find a reason to raid me over it and say like, you can't have this anymore. Like, you know, they probably say, oh, that Pathways video you did, that's the reason you can't own the gun, because we think you're going to do some right-wing terror thing with it. You know, it's just one of those things where, you know, so anyway, I will go off now because, like I said, my chest is tight, but I'm amazed I managed to stream this long. Thank you for the donation. Again, Cesari is chill. Don't forget to like the stream, everyone, and I'll hopefully be on again tomorrow. Yeah, right, cool. Yeah, I'm going to have to go now, otherwise I'm going to keep talking and make my throat even more sore. So yeah, see ya, bye.